do this. All right. Take this to the Patriot Tech channel as well. Mine as well. So again, folks, we got some interesting things to go over here today. Let me get this pulled up. So we know, what was it, Friday we had the release of the FBI released the document intel officers used to brief Trump on the dossier. All right, and we talked about this a little bit a couple days ago, but it was heavily redacted, and they kind of switched up what they gave us. They showed how, like it was supposed to be something else. They pulled a little fast one. But here's the meat of the story, all right? This came on January 23rd. Earlier this year, of course. And it just talks about FBI officials, FBI agents threaten physical harm to President Trump and missing FBI text and other frightening communications. So just to go over this story that came out almost a year ago, folks. Right up here, January 23rd, 2018. A high-ranking FBI official confirms a number of missing 50,000 FBI text messages, as well as other text and email messages among FBI brass reportedly discussed initiating physical harm to President Trump. Now, we know that we've heard about this through the Q. I think at this point that we know of 6, 7 attempts. The whole Vegas shooting, supposedly. Again, we can't confirm, just things point to that. We've done the research on his whereabouts that day, and it is plausible that he could be there. Now, is it written in the White House? That can be people's proof. Like, no, look, he did this, this, and this, and then he got back to D.C. that day at 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock. Well, then he can secretly fly out again. It's just not something released. So it is hard to prove a lot of this, but, you know, like we've said, half this country is following the Trump-Russia collusion, and the media is all about it, and we can say, where's the proof? And they can just tell you, well, we're looking for it. Okay, well, we're looking for this proof. So we're going to go over it over and over. We're going to jump into things. We're going to look at things and where the dots connect. And then, you know, sometimes there's this little leap, or you just got to wait for a few more things to come to light. But it's logical. So here we have a high-ranking FBI official. Well, who is this guy, and what would he know? This is what we call to be, sometimes things get out. Whether you call it leaking or just tidbits, the mainstream, you know, people have leaked on purpose to get a narrative. Typically on the bad side, you know, the evil ones. They'll leak, give you a lot of the truth, give you the meat of the story, but you know, just change the name, change the narrative at the very, 10% of the story. So the FBI official urged the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, which oversees the U.S. Secret Service, to launch an investigation of the Justice Department, the FBI, and all text messages missing and otherwise that threaten the president. This is dangerous territory, and all FBI text messages and personal phones should be examined, the official said. It would reveal some frightening conversations. Did FBI brass discuss the assassination of President Donald Trump? If not, what was the nature of the threats against the president from inside the alleged premier law enforcement agency in the United States? Director Wray wants a lid on this, the FBI officially said. Many know there was talk of harming Trump politically, but there's a group here, in the brackets, NDC headquarters, that understands it goes deeper. We need a special counsel or Homeland Security. Somebody has to clean this up outside of the DOJ. It's unacceptable. See, this is where the DOJ would like to, promote, lobby for. We'll look at it. We'll have this guy over here do a pretty thorough research, and it would turn up nothing. These people, they never show up to court missing things or misplacing things or not, But when it comes to them, just release these texts and, prove your innocence. You guys have nothing to hide. You keep saying, you can just release them and then say, see, there's nothing, but they won't. We lost them. We didn't keep them. A malfunction happened in the computers for the first time in 10 years. And when you go back in the history books, even 20, 30 years, and any time they've ever lost something, it's always something that would, show them in the wrong. That's no different than what they portray to do onto everyone else. We're taking down evil and bad, except for when it's yourself. This is the crap we can't stand for anymore. This is much larger than just texts between two FBI agents. The FBI official called on President Trump to do what is necessary to weed out corruption in the FBI. Text messages just don't disappear, the FBI official said. Not here. Someone outside of the DOJ has to look at all the emails and texts. These FBI bosses are bad people. You've only scratched the surface. The high-ranking FBI officials called on lawmakers and Inspector General to focus on the text message and email messages of FBI Director Andrew McCabe. The official referred to McCabe's official. The official referred to McCabe's official and personal correspondence in anti-Trump treasure trove. As reported in March 2017 by the True Pundit, McCabe openly threatened President Trump and then National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn, saying, "First we F Flynn, fuck Flynn, then we fuck Trump," to severe high-ranking FBI bosses who cheered his comment. McCabe, the second highest-ranking FBI official, emphatically declared at the invite only gathering with raised voice, F Flynn, F Trump. According to the direct sources, many of its top lieutenants applauded and cheered such rhetoric. A scattered few did not. This was one of the several such meetings held in seclusion among key FBI leaders since Trump was elected president, FBI sources confirm. So this is funny. I don't know where this country's gotten to, because when I ended up doing, 4 under Clinton and 5 under Bush, folks, people in 98 were getting them watches that had a Bill Clinton. I don't know if you remember these. There were Bill Clinton on the watch. They were being sold on TV, and as the day went on, his nose grew on the watch. You couldn't wear those in uniform. Yeah, you'd get in trouble. It was, this is the president. You're supposed to support whoever. That's just the military, and they're able to put that down on us. So you're telling me the FBI can have meetings like this in this day and age and chant things like that when that's the picture on their wall? Because, it would have been Obama, and you have, you start replacing. There's always that in all government buildings. They have pictures of the president and other people in positions, and they get changed out when, unbelievable. And then they want to cover this up using national security. It's for, we can't disclose things. It'll hurt the country. Well, yeah, what you did would hurt the country, and you're going to lose everything you had at that place, and possibly, if you broke law, go to jail. But that's what they're trying to cover up. So if you are among the millions of Americans who have pondered in recent months whether the Obama-era deep state intelligence apparatus and FBI are working for or against Trump, this is a first definitive proof that the country's once premier law enforcement agency has gone rogue. The non-elected hierarchy that steered the FBI have declared war on President Trump and his White House inner circle. Make no mistake. So, folks, we know. Flynn has since been indicated and pled guilty to charge of lying to the FBI from an investigation supervised by McCabe after an FBI interview conducted by Peter Strzok. One of the agents busted sending anti-Trump text messages, and Trump remains under investigation by U.S. Special Counsel Robert Mueller, a figure linked to several conflicts of interest in the case, including prior deals with McCabe. As reported yesterday in the True Pundit, members of the FBI, Justice Department, top brass at their Washington, D.C. headquarters and other field offices are now using burner phones to stay under the radar of FBI investigators and lawmakers, according to FBI insiders. So now they're using the same, they're doing criminal activity. Why don't we get it written in their damn contracts that they have to use their government phones during the daytime, and then they can use whatever, maybe outside of work. But if we find out otherwise, that they're doing stuff like this, they're resorting to criminal tactics. That's what criminals would do. It's like, well, we're still going to talk our crap and plot our plots, but we're just going to use burner phones now. I thought you guys were taking this kind of stuff down. While that is disturbing on one level, FBI and DOJ hierarchy employing the telecom habits of drug cartel bosses reaches a new low for the once heralded federal law enforcement agency and the DOJ, and breaks federal laws as well. There you go. So it's already on the books to be that way. The FBI failed to preserve 5 months' worth of text messages exchanged between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, the two FBI employees who made pro-Clinton and anti-Trump comments while working on Clinton email and the Russia collusion. And now more texts are missing from the FBI agents, according to the Justice Department. That means 50,000 text messages. 50,000 per The Hill article from a year ago. Attorney General Jeff Sessions on Monday announced the Justice Department will investigate the missing text messages sent between the two FBI agents, the lovebirds, critical of President Trump, joining the chorus of Republican lawmakers, the choir of the Republican lawmakers, and eager to recover the exchange. GOP officials have seized the messages of the FBI biased against Trump and probes into the Russia election meddling in Hillary Clinton's use of her private email server as Secretary of State. We will leave no stone unturned to confirm with certainty why these text messages are not available to be produced, and we'll use every technology available to determine whether the missing messages are recoverable from another source. So, folks, we know this to be true. If these text messages could clear them, they would do it in a heartbeat. It's kind of funny that it's like, we don't have them, but there was nothing there. Just take our word. We don't do that. We don't do that anymore. We don't do that ever. It's a very bad way to maneuver. You just don't do that. All right. So hold on here. I want to get into the Patriot tech. Getting in here, okay. All right, so another interesting article: members of Congress will no longer be able to use public money to pay for sexual harassment lawsuits. All right, give me a second here. All right, welcome to everybody in the room. I'm looking now. All right, so members of Congress will no longer be able to use public money to pay for their sexual harassment settlements. On Wednesday, members of the House and Senate ended their month-long battle over whose bill to combat all these sexual harassment cases that these people face, it seems like. Folks, for years, it's like they almost had like a slush fund available to them, all right? Lawmakers would get harassed or harassment charges, and they are able to use basically a slush fund, grab money. It was taxpayers' dollars. It was something set to the side, and then they can pay off people that way. It was to keep them quiet and to keep their names, and then they just continue on with business. I think that needs to end, which it did. They now will have to do these out of their own pockets, and I think they should release all the names. This is they need. Several members of Congress have resigned this past year alone over allegations of sexual harassment and sexual misconduct. In the recent years, members of Congress, including Representatives Pat Meehan and Blake Farenthold, have come under intense criticism for using public money to settle harassment claims. In the past decade, members of Congress have used taxpayers' dollars to pay out almost $200,000 to settle sexual harassment claims. In the recent interview with the Jezebel NBC reporter Casey Hunt, who has reportedly extensively on the issue, broke down some of the flaws of Congress' current system of reporting and addressing sexual harassment and discrimination. You had 6 months to decide whether or not you wanted to report it. If you waited 6 months, you didn't have you didn't say anything, after that you would have no recourse. If you wanted to report it, you had to go to an obscure office called the Office of Compliance. There was a poll that Roll Call did of Hill staffers, and most of them had no idea that this office was even there. So they took a poll to see who even knew. At the time, the office was not available to help interns or anyone who was not an official Capitol employee. Once you reported it, you had to go through a mandatory counseling period where they would make you assure them that, yes, you really did want to go forward with it. You had to go to mediation very often. If you did end up getting a settlement, you were forced to sign a non-disclosure. You had your own lawyer in the process, but lawyers for whoever it was that you were accusing, be it a member of Congress or another member of the staff, those lawyers were paid with taxpayer dollars, as were, or are, I should say, the settlements that resulted from these complaints. So that's the way it worked. Unbelievable. I mean, what would make them even care about, I'm going to go ahead and say this to this person, and if they don't bite on it and we don't end up hooking up and going out tonight, I'll just pay with taxpayers' dollars. And I'm sure they're real, what do you need to be quiet? $30,000. All right, I'll do it. That's not even your money. What the hell? Who sets up this crap? Unbelievable. We need to know every one of these names. They need to be gone. FBI releases the document intel officers used to brief Trump. We know that. All right, so I'm going to shut this down just for the Patriot Hour. I'll stay on here a little longer with the live folks from the Patriot Tech. Again, folks, thanks for stopping by. There's a couple of articles here for you. I'll leave the links down below. Mike, this is a Patriot Hour. God bless, Godspeed each and every one of you worldwide. All right, folks, I'm still here on the Patriot Tech. Let me see here. All right, good morning, Patriots. A little pop-up chat here so I can see. All right, folks. Yep, we're still here, still going live a little bit longer here. We're at the 17-minute mark. How about that? So they ruled Obamacare unconstitutional, I saw. Which I believe, what I've looked into, it is. So this FBI email chain, I just cannot believe. I can't believe that they've destroyed evidence again. And folks, we just cannot have this. You gotta, and I would say, FBI comes and knocking on your door, slam the door, call a lawyer, don't frickin' say a word. 20 years ago, I mean, even now, looking back at certain documentaries I've watched and come to, and the way these government employees operate now, they are doing plausible deniability at the highest levels. That used to be something just kind of privy to the highest levels of government, but now it's, they don't do anything themselves. They'll take a civilian, they'll entice you, they'll get you to sign something with them, and then they got you by the balls. They'll use you, abuse you, and then when it comes down at the very end and corruption's coming out over what they got you involved in, they will be done with you. You will be done. If you don't go down dying in the last stunt they have you in, you're getting locked up, probably like in a padded cell. You just look at all these cases of these people. They just... and that's the whole story, and I look at Timothy McVeigh. These people that were involved in Ruby Ridge, Waco, Oklahoma City, over this 10-year time span. Same guys' names come up, same people. The story is Tim McVeigh never got out. You know, they paint him as a bad soldier, but yet he was picked up for special ops school after being in the first Gulf War. That was like the icing on his cake. Everyone that knew of him in the military was congratulating him. He was going to be leaving Iraq in a few weeks to get back to head over to Special Forces training. And there's pictures of him on the security detail around 4-star general. And you don't get that. Was it Schwarzkopf? You don't get to be around these people unless you're deemed stable, good, your records are tight. He was picked up for that security detail. Yes, you can call it Manchurian candidate. We call it a sheep-dipped soldier, all right? Sheep-dipped. You never truly get out. All right, so what would have happened was he went to his own story of things that, you know, we have gotten letters and what got painted to the media back then. I was young. I was cutting through living rooms. My dad would be watching the news. I'd stop and just see this guy. And all I could remember from back then was, wow, this guy was in the service and he's crazy. That's about what I got out of the mainstream back then. That's what was portrayed onto me. And it stuck with me for a long, long time. Sometimes people go in the service and they get crazy. And that could be very true, all right? It's, you know, our eyes are recorders, all right? You know, our eyes are like video cameras, and everyone records different things, and everything shocks people differently, depending on your, you know, things that you've seen, crises you've been through, how you handle it, how you interpret it, how, you know, there's many, many things, and it affects everybody differently too, all right? You can train all you want in the military shooting targets and getting really good and being a sharpshooter, scoping downrange, hitting the target, but the minute you have another human on the other end of that scope, it's a different ball game, and it affects people differently. But the point of this is supposedly top-notch soldier gets into the special forces after many and many attempts of writing to get in, you know, putting in the resume, to get transferred in, to even get accepted to their front door. And it takes a lot, and he did. And then when he gets there, the story goes, there's 300-400 of them. And after several days of a battery of tests, which is typical, lots of paperwork, they called out 15 to 20 people. I think he said, or maybe eight, let's just say 8 or 10 people by social security numbers only. And he was one of them 3 days into this. And they took him into a room, and there was people in black jackets, and they were recruiting him for something bigger. They said black ops or this or that. However they pitched it to him, he accepted. And they said it was for domestic and foreign things that had to happen. There's a lot of bad people they pitched it to him as, and he took that to be a very honorable job, higher than what he was even going to be a part of doing this mainstream special ops. This was behind the doors special ops. So he took it hook, line, and sinker. They told him he was going to go out, and in the equivalents of movies you've seen, he wasn't in the Navy, but it's like, go ring the bell and do it in front of all your classmates, and then you're going to go back to your old unit, you're going to act a certain way, and then you're going to separate. And your time's coming up, you're just going to get out, and you're going to go through all the methods. That's even getting your IDs changed back, getting your military ID gone, getting your driver's license again, coming back home. But he was truly never out, and he was used, pawned. They even changed the location of what he was doing at the last minutes or hours, days. Everything planned was switched at the last minute because it was done on purpose. Now, folks, there was one local news media cast down there in that area at the time, and they were getting the truth out. All these other mainstreams were pitching the same thing. This news team was there, and shortly after this, they got bought out, if you look into it, and then all old records destroyed, all old news footage destroyed, and just put in with the mainstream stuff there. That was how crazy this was in the 90s, that there was still a few locally owned, places producing news. So You could watch their stuff, and it's a total different narrative than what was going on in the mainstream then, and it's just unbelievable. So, sorry to go on a rant on that, but that was a good, that was years and years ago I got into that, and that led me on to many, many things. Like I said, I ended up going backwards from Oklahoma City and, Waco and Ruby Ridge, and then ended up in the barrack bombings in Beirut. I mean, just all the times, and just to look at what was really going on around those times. The common thread I saw with those three in the 90s was the same players within the heads of some of these agencies. Just unbelievable. So how's everyone doing this Monday morning? Still before noon here. Who's cooking? David's cooking. Yep, you guys, you're all, do what you can. That's why we got several mods. Each live stream, we're not going to have all of our mods. We understand that. That's why we got a few here. Again, you guys here on the live stream, let me see. So I got in touch. I got an email back from one of the coin winners that I selected already, and I'm going to do a show later today on that. I'm going to get a video in of one of the people that are getting this, and I'll select a few other randoms here. I need to get these out today or by tomorrow, just because I want this whole nice week. Hopefully they could arrive. I know the mail system and everything's backed up. This is one of the peak times of the year. When I first got out, I said I was government contracting, which was correct, but I also worked at UPS for about 5 months. Did some data act stuff for them, computer. But I was noticed when I was there for that amount of time. I was there throughout the Christmas month, and it was real heavy. All the packages going out steadily for about a couple months, and then right after the New Year's, lots of stuff coming back because a lot of returns. I saw a whole bunch of those like NordiTracks. It's like everyone was ordering them up. I'm going to do NordiTrack and get into shape. That's my New Year's resolution. But then by the 15th of January, a lot of them were coming back from throughout the country, just kind of changed their minds. Their resolutions didn't, it was the first one to not be met. So, do what you can, folks. I'm not knocking. Let's see if we can get any new breaking top stories happening here. U.S. News. Let's do top stories. U.S. News. Trump pitches border wall, rips Dems as showdown looms. 11 minutes ago, The Hill. Trump pitches border wall, rips Dems as the shutdown deadline nears. President Trump on Monday tweeted that any Democrat who says the U.S. can have border security without a wall can be written off, just as another politician following the party line. Trump tweeted the remark days before a December 21st headline for funding the government. The demands for wall funding threatened to close parts of government on Saturday. Anytime you hear a Democrat saying that you can have a good border security without a wall, write them off as just another politician following the party line, he wrote on Twitter. Time for us to save billions of dollars a year and have, at the same time, far greater safety and control. Trump has been pushing for Congress to approve $5 billion in funding for the wall. Congress needs to pass a series of funding by December 21st to avoid a partial government shutdown. Democrats have refused to provide the $5 billion. Trump last week said he'd be proud to shut down the government over the wall funding. So we heard that. We know. I am proud to shut down the government for border security, Trump told House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Charles, during a public meeting inside the Oval Office. Yeah, public was right, because the cameras got brought in at the last minute. I will take the mantle, he added. I will be the one to shut it down. I'm not going to blame you for it. And it's kind of funny because they wanted to be able to use that, which they did. They wanted to be able to use it better than what they got to. I kind of think it kind of hurt Chuck's feeling. He's sitting in that room with his head down because, man, he's taking all the fun out of this for me. They're not allowing us to use this in a manner that be more of a firework. So it was already taken out, already taken down. Morning L, morning Amy, morning Danielle, Mary Willis, God's Warrior, Grandpa C, Kimberly Carpenter, Hilda McKenzie, getting ready to be noon here. We're at 11:30, so all right. Still looking at some articles here. Russian effort to impact vote targeted African Americans now. After poll loses, Republican women sound warning. Yeah. Megyn Kelly cuts her hair, talks new beginnings. I'm going to cut my hair, dye it, change my outfit, and start a new show. Nobody will remember me. I mean, what? I don't... Sessions should be ashamed. We saw his tweet on that. Let me just go to Trump's account here. 24 minutes ago. Oh, that was no way. Because I was reading that earlier. Okay, maybe. Anytime you hear a Democrat saying, and I just read that before I started up the show, I guess. And we just read it in that last article. So it is incredible that with very strong dollar and virtually no inflation, the outside world blowing up around us, Paris is burning and China's way down, the Fed is even considering yet another interest rate hike. Take the victory. And you got this guy. The U.S. economy is also blowing up and headed for a massive recession. More precisely, the bubble the Fed created that helped you make larger has popped. What's incredible is that neither you nor the Fed understands this or will accept responsibility for the consequences. Peter Schiff, we are, what do you recommend, bud? Why don't we just stop the Fed, give power back to the people? Well, that won't work. What would be your naysay on that, buddy? The Russian witch hunt hoax started as an insurance policy long before I even got elected. It is very bad for our country. They're entrapping people for misstatements, lies, or unrelated things that took place many years ago. Nothing to do with a collusion, a Democratic scam. I read that last night. So he hasn't tweeted much. It was just this one, or three of them, 3 hours ago. 3 hours ago and 26 minutes. So that's all he's done today. Busy Monday. All right. I'm going to leave this up for a little bit for you guys. I'm going to put on a little video here. and I'll jump back in. You guys can come and go as you please. Let me I just gotta go do a few things and then I'm going to jump back in, so I'm not even gonna shut it down. Find a video. That's not right.
In the midterms. That
Here we go.
That, well, if
Let's
you don't
go.
mind,
Let's
Mr.
go.
President,
Come on.
that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr.
I
President,
consider it to be an
as you know,
invasion.
Mr. President, caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling
And
me that.
why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of opinion.
But do you think that you demonized immigrants in
Not
this
at all.
election
No, not
to
at all.
try to keep?
I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. You know, they have to come and get through a process. I want it to be a process, and I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your
Don't-
campaign-
wait,
your
wait,
campaign-
Wait. You know why we need the people, don't you? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
They're hundreds of miles away. They're hundreds and hundreds of
You know
miles
what?
away. That's
I
not
think
an
you
invasion.
should, honestly, you know
miles
what?
away. That's
I
not
think
an
you
invasion.
should- honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings
Let
would
me
be
ask,
much
if
better.
I may
Okay,
ask
that's
one other
enough.
question, Mr. President. If I may,
That's
I was
enough.
going to ask one other. The other folks.
That's
have had,
enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
Excuse
President.
me, that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other
Peter,
question,
let's
if
go.
I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned
indictments-
about anything with
you
the
may have
Russian
indictments coming
investigation because it's a hoax.
Are you-
That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Mr. President,
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter, go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts
Well,
his
I'm
butt
not a
like
big
the rest
fan of
us.
yours either, so
I understand.
to be honest.
So let me ask you a question if I can. You repeatedly
You
said,
aren't the best.
Mr. President, you repeatedly, over the course
Okay,
of the...
just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead.
Mr. President, over the course of the last several days of the campaign, sir, at the end of the campaign, you repeatedly said that Americans need to fear Democrats. You said would unleash a wave of violent crime that endangers families everywhere. Why are you
Because
pitting
they're very weak on
Americans?
crime.
Why are
Excuse
you
me.
pitting
Excuse me.
Americans
Peter.
against one another, sir?
Peter, you're trying to be him.
No, I'm
Peter,
just asking the question.
Let me just tell you, very simple, because they're very weak on crime. Go ahead, take the.
The things that I'm going to tell you about today are horrendous, but the flip side of it is some of the things that the New World Order and the Illuminati know, if they were put to good use, would be fantastic. But if you saw what I've seen, it would make you angry that these people are taking what could be used for the elevation of mankind, and they're using it to enslave us.
Evil men have already divided up the world into regions, and they've got it all planned. They want to rule the world. Their goal is to reduce the population to 500 million, with a few of them as the elite get to rule the world.
I want to tell you about a few of the things that I have learned during these last 5 years of intensive research. Perhaps the most startling thing that I can share with you is that all of the conspiracy theories that you've ever heard about one world government, about the UN takeover of the world, all of those conspiracies have now been laid to rest. There's nothing conspiratorial about it. It's all published. The UN-funded Commission on Global Governance began meeting in 1992 in earnest and met for 4 years, and last fall released their final report. It is entitled Our Global Neighborhood.
Although what you are going to see and hear sounds very peculiar, remember that a lot of people, for instance, ex-personnel of the US and UK armed forces, have been brutally murdered for making their information public.
I can't breathe, man. We're here. Hey, man. Hey, I got something to mail you out, man. You're just freaking out here.
Still don't give a shit, my ignorance is still a blood.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I'm not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. I not only could not stifle controversy among your readers, I welcome it. This administration intends to be candid about its errors. For as a wise man once said, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to correct it. We intend to accept full responsibility for our errors, and we expect you to point them out when we miss them. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
In order to begin to understand how our financial system works, we need to go back to the early 1900s, 1910 to be exact. Everyone at some point in their lives has heard of the Federal Reserve, but most likely don't understand what it is or how it works. The Federal Reserve, referred to as the Fed, is a central bank that many economists refer to as the biggest robbery ever enacted on the American people. The reason for this is because the Federal Reserve is neither part of the federal government, nor does it have any reserves. Yet, this single organization controls the money supply of the most powerful country in the world. The Fed is very diligent in hiding the fact that they are not part of the government. The last thing they want the American people to fully understand is that our government does not control our own money. In order to achieve this, they were very clever and decided to call their institution the Federal Reserve. And by labeling themselves this way, the general public never thought twice about who was in control of the country's money supply. If the Federal Reserve is not part of the government, then who controls this private organization and how did this come to be? The answer to this question is what changed the course of our country forever. In November of 1910, a secret meeting took place of 6 bankers and economic policymakers who represented the financial elite of the Western world. It was hosted at the J.P. Morgan estate on Jekyll Island in Georgia. In attendance was Senator Nelson W. Aldrich, Abram Piatt Andrew Jr., Assistant Secretary of the Treasury, Frank Vanderlip, President of National City Bank of New York, Henry P. Davidson, Senior Partner of J.P. Morgan and Company, Charles D. Norton, President of First National Bank of New York, Paul Warburg, Director of Wells Fargo, Benjamin Strong, the emissary for J.P. Morgan and, coincidentally, the first president of the Federal Reserve. Years later, Frank Vanderlip referred to this meeting as the actual conception of what eventually became the Federal Reserve System. This meeting was so secret at the time that not even the names of those who attended were mentioned to the servants who lived and worked on the island. The men who attended came on a late-night train, claiming to be on their way to a hunting expedition, but instead, these bankers met with Senator Nelson Aldrich to draft what would eventually become the Federal Reserve Act. This private meeting, attended by some of the most powerful men in America, was strategically designed to take control of our country's money supply and to achieve ultimate power in America. Meyer Amschad Rothschild, one of the most powerful European bankers of his time, stated it best when he said, "Permit me to issue and control the money of the nation, and I care not who makes its laws." On December 23, 1913, 2 days before Christmas, when most people in Congress were home with their families, the Federal Reserve Act was signed into law by President Woodrow Wilson. That single act, however small it may seem, transferred the control of our monetary system from our government into the hands of some of the wealthiest men in our country. putting into law the Federal Reserve Act gave unlimited power to a few wealthy banking institutions in America. The Fed has the power to issue currency, manipulate interest rates, and run secret bailouts. Yet Congress and the President are not allowed full oversight over this powerful organization. The Federal Reserve enjoys a monopoly over the creation of our nation's money and credit, but for 100 years, they have never been completely transparent and accountable about it. And we don't have to look back too far from today to see what it looks like in real life. When testifying before Congress in 2009, Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke refused to disclose which institutions received trillions of dollars in these bailouts and loans, or give our representatives details about what deals were being made.
So my question to you is, will you tell the American people to whom you lent $2.2 trillion of their dollars? Will you tell us who got that money and what the terms are of those agreements?
Hundreds and hundreds of banks, any bank or that has access to the U.S. Federal Reserve's discount.
Will you tell us who they are?
No.
In an interview with Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner, he makes the stunning assertion that conducting a full audit of the Federal Reserve, something never before done in its 100-year history, is a line that we don't want to cross. To be denied full transparency of these transactions after U.S. taxpayers contributed over $16 trillion to these bailouts and loans is unthinkable and unconstitutional. It is our right as American citizens to know where our money is being spent. It's very ironic that if you don't give the IRS full transparency with your finances, you go to jail. But if you're a private organization of elite bankers that controls the money supply of a country, you're free to do as you please without full oversight. This private organization is arrogant in the fact that the same accounting laws that apply to the rest of America do not apply to them.
There is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take.
Their control appears to be unlimited, and 2008 is the most recent example of how much power the Fed actually has on our country.
Many of us were told in private conversations that if we voted against this bill on Monday, that the sky would fall, the market would drop 2,000 or 3,000 points the first day, another couple thousand the second day, and a few members were even told that there would be martial law in America if we voted no. That's what I call fear-mongering.
The elite banking institutions took trillions of dollars worth of risk, and when they lost their bets, they threatened politicians to use taxpayer money to bail them out, or else we would face an Armageddon type of scenario. This historic change of power in America is again why many economists refer to it as the biggest robbery ever enacted on the American people.
I just can't get enough.
(1775), the American Revolutionary War began as the American colonies sought to detach from England and its oppressive monarchy. Though many reasons are cited for the revolution, one in particular sticks out as the prime cause: that King George III of England outlawed the interest-free, independent currency the colonies were producing and using for themselves, in turn forcing them to borrow money from the Central Bank of England at interest, immediately putting the colonies into debt. And, as Benjamin Franklin later wrote, the refusal of King George III to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators was probably the prime cause of the revolution. In 1783, America won its independence from England. However, its battle against the central bank concept and the corrupt, greed-filled men associated with it had just begun. So what is a central bank? A central bank is an institution that produces the currency of an entire nation. Based on historical precedent, two specific powers are inherent in central banking practice: the control of interest rates and the control of the money supply, or inflation. The central bank does not simply supply a government's economy with money, it loans it to them at interest. Then, through the use of increasing and decreasing the supply of money, the central bank regulates the value of the currency being issued. It is critical to understand that the entire structure of this system can only produce one thing in the long run: debt. It doesn't take a lot of ingenuity to figure this scam out. For every single dollar produced by the central bank is loaned at interest. That means every single dollar produced is actually the dollar plus a certain percent of debt based on that dollar. And since the central bank has the monopoly over the production of the currency for the entire country, and they loan each dollar out with immediate debt attached to it, where does the money to pay for the debt come from? It can only come from the central bank again, which means the central bank has to perpetually increase its money supply to temporarily cover the outstanding debt created, which in turn, since that new money is loaned out at interest as well, creates even more debt. The end result of this system without fail is slavery, for it is impossible for the government and thus the public to ever come out of the self-generating debt. The founding fathers of this country were well aware of this. By the early 20th century, the U.S. had already implemented and removed a few central banking systems, which were swindled into place by ruthless banking interests. At this time, the dominant families in the banking and business world were the Rockefellers, the Morgans, the Warburgs, the Rothschilds. And in the early 1900s, they sought to push once again legislation to create another central bank. However, they knew the government and public were very weary of such an institution, so they needed to create an incident to affect public opinion. So, J.P. Morgan, publicly considered a financial luminary at the time, exploited his mass influence by publishing rumors that a prominent bank in New York was insolvent or bankrupt. Morgan knew this would cause mass hysteria, which would affect other banks as well. And it did. The public, in fear of losing their deposits, immediately began mass withdrawals. Consequently, the banks were forced to call in their loans, causing the recipients to sell their property, and thus a spiral of bankruptcies, repossessions, and turmoil emerged. Putting the pieces together a few years later, Frederick Allen of Life magazine wrote, "The Morgan interests took advantage to precipitate the panic, guiding it shrewdly as it progressed." Unaware of the fraud, the Panic of 1907 led to a congressional investigation headed by Senator Nelson Aldrich, who had intimate ties to the banking cartels and later became part of the Rockefeller family through marriage. The commission, led by Aldrich, recommended a central bank should be implemented so a panic like 1907 could never happen again. This was the spark the international bankers needed to initiate their plan. In 1910, a secret meeting was held at a J.P. Morgan estate on Jekyll Island off the coast of Georgia. It was there that the central banking bill called the Federal Reserve Act was written. The legislation was written by bankers, not lawmakers. This meeting was so secretive, so concealed from government and public knowledge, that the 10 or so figures who attended were told they could only use their first names.
This meeting was so secretive, so concealed from government and public knowledge, that the 10 attendees used code names.
I am clearly the richest man, so I should be the one to run the super-secret central bank. I own all the oil in America. I'm clearly richer than you will ever be, hula girl. I should run the super-secret central bank. You're nothing compared to me, lube job. I shall run the secret bank.
Silence!
Supreme Master Leader, I didn't know you were gonna be here.
I'm not. Neither are you, dumbass.
Oh, yeah, right. He's so smart.
None of you shall run the bank. We have failed in the past because of openness. This time, the key to success is secrecy. The people must believe that they run the bank.
Yes, brilliant! A sneak attack. What's the plan?
We first create panic, then we show them the solution. With our man in office and well-planned timing, we will have our central bank. And so the people think it is theirs. We shall christen it federal. The Federal Reserve.
They struck on December 23rd, 1913. When most of our Congress were at home eating fruitcake, these bastards, I mean bankers, presented their treasonous act to their newly elected accomplice, Woodrow Wilson, who had fortuitously already agreed to sign it before he was even elected. Wait, the IRS? I thought we always had the IRS. No, pal. They did this to us too. The Fed now has the exclusive power to print America's money. They loan this money to our banks and our government at interest, putting immediate debt on our own money, printing more and more, so each dollar they print becomes worth less than the one before. Merry Christmas. What in the hell is that? That pile is how our government now must pay back these debts to the Fed. Your taxes do not go to your government. They don't? It's the greatest theft in human history. But, okay, I mean, I sort of get what you're saying, but it's also confusing. And really, Hardman, I don't see how it affects me at all. If I had more money, none of this would have...
After this bill was constructed, it was then handed over to their political frontman, Senator Nelson Aldrich, to push through Congress. And in 1913, with heavy political sponsorship by the bankers, Woodrow Wilson became president, having already agreed to sign the Federal Reserve Act in exchange for campaign support. And 2 days before Christmas, when most of Congress was at home with their families, the Federal Reserve Act was voted in, and Wilson in turn made it law. Years later, Woodrow Wilson wrote, in regret, McFadden also expressed the truth after the passage of the bill. A world banking system was being set up here, a superstate controlled by international bankers, acting together to enslave the world for their own pleasure. The Fed has usurped the government. Now, the public was told that the Federal Reserve System was an economic stabilizer, and inflation and economic crises were a thing of the past. Well, as history has shown, nothing is further from the truth. The fact is, the international bankers now had a streamlined machine to expand their personal ambitions.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
For example, from 1914 to 1919, the Fed increased the money supply by nearly 100%, resulting in extensive loans to small banks and the public. Then, in 1920, the Fed called in mass
was one extreme, and then we came into the Reagan administration, yet
nothing changed.
Nothing changed. What you're saying is that no matter what the political leanings, they seem to be playing the same game.
As long as you're playing their game, it doesn't matter who you vote for, who you put in office. They all belong to the other side. They're the pockets of the Illuminati. When you quit electing professional politicians, when you quit electing the guy who looks nice on television because he speaks good and he looks like the guy you wanted to marry or something like that, you're playing right into their hands. You know, they made it so impossible for another Abraham Lincoln to get elected to the office of president that it's a wonder that we even have a chance at all. We need to send people to Congress and to government who are going to clean house. Kick all the members of secret societies out of the bureaucracy. Lock them up. Try them for treason. Because they are traitors.
So one thing that may help is term limitations.
We must have term limitations, and it must be only one term. And forget all this nonsense that anybody goes to Washington and don't know what's happening. They don't know what's happening simply because they haven't taken the time as citizens to understand how our government works before they ever go to Washington. You see, it should be a process that starts in infancy and works its way up, and everybody should be taking part in the government.
Now, if someone came in to office with this kind of knowledge and with this kind of intent to really push these people out, would they not be eliminated immediately?
Not if they have the people behind them, because what the people would do in one fell swoop, in one election, would elect people who've never served in government before, kick the incumbents out, send citizens to Washington. And here's the way it has to be done. You know, right now, you don't even pay your congressman. You know who pays your congressman? The federal democracy of the District of Columbia. The federal government pays your congressman, who's supposed to be representing your state and you. The federal government is a foreign country to your state. Why should he represent you?
All right. Welcome back to the Patriot Hour. All right, folks, got another little article I wanted to get in here. Neon Revolt. It's been a while since I've checked in on his site. I used to follow it quite a bit. Done a few episodes in the past. December 17th, Junior Senator Anon heralds legal revelations for Q Researcher, hashtag Q Researchers plus advent of the Q March, hashtag QAnon Great Awakening, Neon Revolt. I know I said no new articles while I write my book, but this was quick to produce. Normally I can fit a handful of images into a short Gab post, but this was too long to squash into Gab. And let's face it, there have been a slew of new Q posts I haven't covered. Let me see where I stopped there. Right here, a slew of new Q posts I haven't covered. They haven't needed much decoding. The posts that got me the most excited were his earthquake post and the post about the Fed. And the post that got me the most skeptical was when QAnon confirmed that the baker was wearing a frog pin when she was clearly wearing a St. Jude's pin. I don't know if Q didn't know himself, but it reminded me of the time when he talked about photoshopped flag as though it was real. Not good, Q. But we're not here to talk about Q today, at least not yet. No, we're visiting another insider who left some interesting drops worth reviewing. Essentially, someone calling himself hashtag Junior Senator Anon landed on Political Tonight and started a Q&A. The POL board lax jumped on board, and after reviewing everything, I would say this was a visit from a legit insider. Obviously, feel free to disagree. This comes with all the standard disclaimers. What follows are all the questions asked by Anons and which were then answered by the Junior Senator Anon. Expect all sorts of offensive language ahead because it's political board. So just put on your big boy pants and learn to mentally filter and not get offended. And I'll do my best to try to, just use abbreviations and start whining like, well, hashtag crybaby Gerald Holt or hashtag Soros rent boy Jordan. I'm more interested in Junior Senator Anon and what he had to say, but also realize this isn't going to be like QAnon either. This isn't someone with high-level security clearance leaking stuff. It's someone with a very close, on-the-ground perspective answering random questions on the fly. Still interesting. Still worth noting. But the big revelation hits home at the end. Once Q Research Anons start talking about what they were just told in light of the recent events. I'll be keeping commentary to a minimum here, only when absolutely necessary. I'll trust most of you familiar with the formatting as well. But Junior Senator Anon's ID is L2 lowercase c GMWKR. And generally speaking, the question and context will be embedded within his response. You'll see it's easy to follow once you get the hang of it. All right, so I haven't really read this article other than just a few minutes worth, and I was like, hey, let's get this going. Okay, so here we go. This is an anonymous. Here's his highlighted in green or yellow up here, his L2C handle. General Flynn will be exonerated. The Mueller probe is going to end very, very soon. Expect HRC to be indicted in the coming weeks. BO shortly after. AMA while I have time. So we got anonymous. What was the holdup? Lawmaker guy, Strzok's phone. Wiping it stalled the process. NSA had to get involved to recover what was on the device. Consistent with what I've heard about them having to pull something from Samsung Knox, which is a security program on Samsung devices. All right, we got him here. So Flynn is the maker? Yes. Marker? Yes. An anonymous here. What do you know about Knight Templar? What do you know about accelerationism? What are the odds Trump goes full Andrew Jackson and ousts and call for a militia? I can't help but observe he has literally army of pissed off white males. Is he aware of the JQ? Thanks. Ha ha ha, no militia, but he will audit the Fed and likely abolish it. L2CGM again. An anonymous post a picture here, FBI. Why isn't the NSA getting the records of Comey and Mueller's phones? You bet these two DNC hacks have been chatting about their plans to overthrow the president like the giddy sissies they are. They are. So that's happening. L2C2, so we got this OF, what that wouldn't take more than 10 seconds for the NSA to pull up you queer. Do you know how difficult it is to get a hold of records? If that was the case, most people in Washington would be in prison. All right. Hold on here. So we talked about that, folks. They rely on the fact of secrecy too. Like, so if Peter Strzok was involved in, how do we know this grand jury hasn't already been impaneled? We were told that from Q way back, almost, March. So maybe it was impaneled then. And then they had all these people all summer long going in front of Congress. We had Peter Strzok do that. Did he lie? Even though he wasn't under oath, if you say everything in that manner to Congress, it's on TV, you're saying it to the people, and then they already have other evidence that he has said other things, but they want him to go on the record first, publicly, and get all that out. And then when he comes in for an interview behind the scenes, behind closed doors, and then they can say, well, you said this. And then, they present him with things he really said in text messages, and now you lied what you said. Well, I wasn't under oath. Is that what they stick by? I only tell the truth if I have to. Like right now. I mean, to admit if they have something on him to the public would just admit his guilt. Well, how does that end? Does he leave out of the courtroom that day in handcuffs? I mean, so of course you're going to lie. But maybe they wanted them to be on the record doing it for show, for us. So when it comes out, they have something to point back to and say, look, this is what he said. This is what he really did. There is no, it's a clear cut. So they rely on the fact until something will come out. See, they're hoping at any minute Trump can get impeached. The right people will get in there to cover all this up. The right people put in place, and then all this goes away for them. That's all they got left. If they've done stuff so bad, there is no admitting you lie and hope that something at the last minute helps you so where you don't go down. You can delay your going down. Otherwise, if you know you've done bad, you're going to go down the minute you admit, or you wait until they just force it down your throat that you're wrong and did bad. So how difficult is it to get a hold of these records? It's do you know how difficult? If that was the case, most people in D.C. would be in prison. Congress and on. I don't like the Capone angle, getting them tax fraud, etc. I want them to hang for pedo stuff. Will my prayers be heard? Junior Senator Anon, actually. So that's all you've said back to that. Congress and on. I don't like the Capone. Not everyone will go down for pedophile. It's so difficult when I'd say 40% of Washington has committed said crimes. Those who committed treason, however, they will be very easy to indict. Comey, Barack Obama, HRC, BC, Bill Clinton, Brennan, and many others who worked in the DOJ. Like I would add Loretta, several others. So we got Anonymous here again. So basically he is not racially aware. Does he not think, given the history books of the Bolsheviks and the German elite families, that they don't immerse hatred for him and his family? Or is he just sided with the Jews against white America? Just curious if he is just out of touch with the working class America and the history of its conscious decision to F us over. What world do you live in? Do you really think there's going to be a racial cleanse in the United States? I'm sorry, but it's not going to happen. The country would fall apart as we know it. All right, so then we got, is the market setting up for a dip? And if so, should we buy the drop? No, it would be fine. I think he's very wrong on this front. The market looks set up for a spectacular crash here, one which only requires a little push, perhaps from a peso sell-off. Hard to say, of course, but that's just my personal opinion. All right, that is Neon Revolt. Back to the anonymous. Also, this is just an anonymous question. Also, I couldn't help but notice you dodged all the tough questions which his base would be most interested in. Most of us here aren't just going to blindly continue to believe him like Q-tards, and the rest of the country seem to be turning on him as well. If you're a real deal, I would expect he needs to be loyal to his base if he expects any back. Otherwise, I don't have any sympathy that he just keeps getting stabbed in the back by every Jew he surrounds himself with. Tell him we said grow some effing balls and quit acting like a little bee about shit. I've answered almost every question. I'm not telling you to support him or trust in him. Do as you please. I'm simply telling you what's going on. He's no saint, but he's trying. He has 6 more years to make you guys happy. All right. Anonymous here. LARP detected. Market is setting up for a significant drop right now. I didn't say bear, or else Trump and media would be not spinning alternative narratives about why it's dropping. It's tariffs. No, it's the Fed. It is the Fed. If you can't realize that, I don't know what else to tell you. Anonymous. The Jews certainly have the balls too. So yes, I think it'll happen. I just don't think it'll be you. That's great. I'm still hearing stuff talk here. Hold on. All right. OP, will the Jews accept white nationalists? You see what we are dealing with here. I cannot identify with these Jaiwam, and who can see Trump wouldn't either. This is foul language here. Israel influence is something I'm not a fan of. Sadly, they're the only ally we have in the Middle East. Their mess is something we should have never been a part of in its first place. You can't expect us to regulate Hollywood and media. I assume that is what is leading you to believe there's a white genocide. Because of the degeneracy it promotes. I get it. I get that. But let the free market decide for itself. How about you pursue a career in media and dismantle it from the inside? That's the only way something like that can be stopped. I would hope at the very least that we would expunge CIA and Mossad influence from Hollywood and maybe ban pornography on public health grounds. That's Neon Revolt. What was up with the sealing off of the whole floor of the courthouse? Rumors are they're getting a case moved from Article 3 to Article 1 court or something like that. Exactly as you said. This was the post that attracted the most attention. I posted these images to Gab on Friday because, yeah, you may have heard an entire court floor was sealed off for a mysterious case. All right, we went over that. We know journalists were swept away, the doors were locked, and guards were put in place. Reporters kicked off the 5th floor entirely for a sealed appeals hearing that may involve Mueller on a grand jury dispute. There are even searching stairwells for reporters. We have split up and trying to cover all entrances and exits. So he just shows tons of stuff, tons of cases. You see all the official entire DC federal courthouse sealed off. Well, we'll get to what Anon's discovered about this at the end of the drops. Got an anonymous here. Trust Sessions. Trust the plan. Let me see. All right. Hoping the music wasn't too loud, folks. I just realized it was up a little bit, but I turned it down a little more. Lame, but everyone is entitled to their opinions. All right. I'm not surprised a junior Senator Anon doesn't know the details of the plan. Okay, there is no music on. All right, perfect. You're right. There it is. I didn't have the actual button push, but the lever was up pretty high. Lame, but everyone is entitled to their opinions. So he's not surprised a junior Senator Anon doesn't know the details. Trump can barely start work by noon, implying his old ass is in running for 2020 is rich. The man barely sleeps. I strongly disliked him for many months, but his work ethic is second to none. He earned my respect. He has had 6 more years to make you guys happy. Not if he doesn't get some shit done in the next 2 years. Fair enough. We sure as hell can when they are regulating our speech and when they preach openly about feeding us out of existence and do one brown race. Yeah, F this cuck stuff. This guy goes on. Well, regulating them when they violate free speech is something we can do. We are working on it. We can't stop them from promoting sex, drugs, etc. That's just the way it is. I don't know what this guy's talking about. Internet Bill of Rights. What was in those envelopes and messages at the funeral? I really have no idea. I couldn't tell you. I've seen people online going crazy over it, but it hasn't been brought up around here. What specifically is HRCD going to be charged with? Gee, lots of things. Treason, money laundering, war crimes, you name it. She is truly the most corrupt individual to step foot in Washington. Everybody knows it. All this means you are incapable of scared to do what needs to be done. 1, martial law. 2, militia. Matter of national security at this point. The only reason he doesn't is he's scared or he just doesn't care about America as much as his Jewish cabal. If what you are saying is true, this country is utterly effed. Having said that, does one join the Jews in such a scenario? How does one join the Jews in such a scenario? Martial law is not out of the question, but you're asking me if the President Trump would call citizens to arm and particularly go to war with minorities. That's never going to happen. Yeah, so which of the myriad crimes are you actually going to be able to nail her on? Money laundering would be the most obvious and easiest, but with that said, many other things could be brought to light during a trial. You never know. The foundation is just the beginning, folks. It will lead to many, many other things. We all know that. Lots of things will come to light. Oh boy, this lawmaker doesn't even know who's behind the curtain. Not our greatest ally, in my opinion. They are the worst. The Middle East is a very complex situation. It's nice to have allies, but the United States as its own and best ally at the end of the day, in my opinion. Thanks for visiting, Anon. Around half of the U.S. population are asleep. Despite last week's revelations, many of these people believe Obama, Hillary, and Comey can do no wrong. Assuming arrests will happen and military tribunals begin being held, what is the plan to quell and resulting public unrest? Is there a plan to wake up those who still believe in Saint Obama? If citizens are stupid enough to riot and protest in support of treasonous criminals, then martial law is the only option. It's not something I want. I'd actually be very disappointed and ashamed if we had to. All right, so we all know martial law is I've heard channels say they like all the Q stuff, it's great, but when they get to the martial law part, they get scared because martial law has been put into a lot of our heads from the Hollywood movies and how they do it. It's always against us, taking guns and coming door to door, and we're moving around in real operated times during the day, and you have to go through border checkpoints with tanks and military, and they got guns, and I always ask, do you support the Constitution? And people are like, well, yeah. And then, well, martial law is in there. I had to point that out to a few people in my life, and they're like, what? And if you look at it, it talks about civil unrest, and I don't promote it, and I don't want it, and we don't want to live under that. But we've already been living under forms of martial law since implementation of all these things that we're under already. Of course, the movie scenario of it is really devastating, and that's what makes most people scared. But if this martial law is coming into effect to take down people that are corrupt in this country, and it's not going to affect much of us, and if it's only for a short amount of time, and they're not coming around collecting guns at that point, there's lots of things that would have to happen to make it a tainted scenario. So what I'm saying is there's martial law that can be inflicted against all the people, and then there's a martial law that just is infected or put out for a few days or a week, couple weeks, and it does, there's some stuff put out, but it's not really affecting the citizens that have done nothing wrong. It's there for our safety and for these pockets of people that would be rioting and causing issues. And I can probably name them, LA, Chicago, New York, places like that would be the biggest probably issues. Yeah, same here, but we don't underestimate the left's collective stupidity. Never underestimate the large group of stupid people in one group. Anonymous, not go to war with anyone. I want to see the war against us stopped. We are being ethnically genocided by forced integration. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But again, that's up to the people to solve the problem, not the government. We have been pushing so hard to protect our sovereignty and keep out unwanted immigrants. It's all we can really do. In my mind, what you're saying really couldn't be a problem if the government was shrunk and local government had more influence. And in a perfect U.S., we could segregate ourselves, live where we want to amongst people like-minded and similar people. Can that be achieved at some point? Absolutely. Can it happen overnight? No. I got to ask you guys out there on the live chat, you're not hearing anything but me, right? Just let me know. Other than maybe a little music or something. I'm hearing some weird stuff come through my headphones, and I've never. So I don't know if I got something else playing. I keep looking. I'm not seeing any videos. All good, only me. All right. Just making sure I'm hearing something. All right. So it's about time for me to redo my computer. It'll take a day. This is when I normally go down for a day. So it's coming up. I got to do it. Slight music, perfect. That's what we want. Just music, a little bit of background, like, See, I'm cranking it up, but I'm gonna bring it back down. No, I'm hearing talking, like either my voice being repeated, which is weird, and that's when I know it's time. I normally redo my computer 3 to 4 times a year. I nuke it all the way down, bring it back up, and it just keeps me peppy, keeps the computer working great. I've always done that. I don't go 5 years, and just clean it up here and there. I take it down. All right, so can it happen overnight? Say something bad about Israel. OP, if you can't, we know you're F. Aiding Israel is a waste of money and despicable in my eyes. Anything else related to Europe? Besides the UK setting up people in the Trump campaign? No, nothing really. Interesting to see Junior Senator Anon basically advocating for ethnic balkanization of the U.S. might be inevitable. Honestly, tribalism is a powerful instinct ingrained in humanity. It creates high-trust societies. That's hard to overcome. What will be done about all the media that is obviously complicit in their crimes and have peddled the Russia frame job? I'm guessing they will be eaten alive by leftists for tricking them so bad. But is there any plan to deal with the mockingbird media? In my honest opinion, CNN and MSNBC will go out of business. 2 years of promising the arrest of president. What reason will people have to watch anymore? It all comes down to the news coverage. If it's fair, they won't riot. If they tell people Trump is arresting political opponents, they will. That's simple. Indeed, if the coverage is in favor of the criminals, we have truly lost what was our country. If you aren't 100% sure that the media will spin it as Trump being literally Hitler and hailing his political opponents, then what effing world do you live in, Senator? When there's hard evidence that will lead to an indictment followed by a prison sentence, I would pray to God Almighty they cover it fairly. Did I say they would? No, I didn't expect them to. But they said they would have to realize they would be out of business when this is all said and done if it's not covered fairly. Can Anon tell us anything about what happened to Senator Rand Paul the day he was allegedly beaten by his neighbor? His ribs were damaged. I don't buy the story. Ha ha ha, I hear his neighbor was just an asshole. What about human trafficking? The evidence is all over. Laura Geyer, the 2 journos in North Korea, etc. Or does that cut too close in the bone for the Illuminati? Sure, look into Haiti. Like I said, amidst trial, lots of things can come out. So during trial, lots of things are going to come out. We looked into Haiti far more than the Jews in our current government. It doesn't patronize us. I didn't mean that in a condescending way. Sorry if you took it like that. I know this board has done pretty solid work regarding her mishandlings and crimes. But with that said, you folks go down rabbit holes that lead to nowhere. Not all the time, but sometimes. All roads lead to Rome. True, politics aside for a second, and a little personal opinion. As a Christian, I'm greatly ashamed of the Vatican. I don't know the whole story from what I've read. It just looks sad. Read the book, An Open Letter to Confused Catholics. Lays everything out pretty well. When there's hard evidence that there will lead to an indictment followed by a prison sentence, I would pray to God Almighty they cover it fairly. Did I say they would? No, I didn't expect them to. But they would have to realize they'd be out of business when this is all said and done if not covered fairly. Fiat accompli. Fate, huh? Not sure. I'm sure some of you know what that means. Leave it down below. I didn't mean that in the condescending way. Sorry if you took it that way. We go down the rabbit holes. I understand. That is why I wish it wasn't that way. We go down rabbit holes because you don't think people are good enough for the truth. We are left guessing and believing all sorts of BS because we all know for certain that is our government on both sides of the aisle have been effing us for decades. I understand that, and I wish it wasn't that way. How do you see the GOP being able to hold on to Texas? It seems they might be turning blue overnight. It'd be nice if folks in California would stop moving in Texas, or at least stop voting the same exact way they did in California, which led them to move there in the first place. It's pretty mind-boggling if you ask me. That's the most annoying thing about California right now. They've turned their state into a burning hellhole, and now they're expecting the same ideas. They're bringing these same ideas, exporting them out of there, and doing it all again. I said that months ago. The people that helped turn California that way, and now they're all moving out because they don't like it, and they're going somewhere else, and they're doing it again. It blows my mind. Expecting different results, doing the exact same thing. Can you answer my question? I know people who died, and it's infuriating to be treated like an idiot despite massive evidence and consistency in official reporting. Which ally did 9/11? I wasn't in government during 9/11, and I have as many questions as you. Do I have my suspicions? Of course. It wasn't in government during 9/11, okay? Cop-out. I'm really sorry. I know it's a letdown. I see a lot of QAnons as I'm scrolling through the thread. Haha. Also, sorry if you think I'm ignoring some questions. I'm trying to answer as many as possible. I'll stay here for a little longer. I see a lot of QAnons as I'm scrolling through the thread. Unfortunately, the Patriot Act is necessary. You know what would make the Patriot Act obsolete? Ending immigration and kicking out everyone who can't pass a lie detector test. America is largely unsalvageable without a civil war, in my honest opinion, Unfortunately, the Patriot Act is necessary. No. F that. That is the single most unconstitutional piece of legislation ever passed in the history of our effing country, along with the NDAA. F that. Our founding fathers are rolling in their effing graves. Necessary my effing ass. Took the words right out of my mouth. I am happy the NSA is helping in regards to this case, sure, but in general, I wish they never existed. I'll bet I'd rather have the military surveil than the FBI or CIA. Regardless, it's unconstitutional. Ask you anything, okay, what the F are you smoking? Marlboro Reds. Can you ask Trump to come out as gay so that he will be first gay president? Ha ha ha, come on, that would be pretty classic though. Thanks for the laugh. Here, I'll give you one question. Which of the following is your best estimate of probability that Trump will get to replace get a replacement in for the Ruth Ginsburg in 2019? 99, 50, 10, 1? G, maybe 50. I'm not going to wish death on a woman. She isn't healthy though, so that's very likely. I mean, to be fair, she looks like she's ready to croak at any moment. How much longer do you guys want me to keep going? I'm actually having a good time. How many good people are in politics? I know there are no saints, but how many politicians are actually in their position to help us, the people? There's a good amount. My favorite people around Congress from smaller areas are congressmen from smaller areas. They seem the most human and try to be involved. Speaking of Supreme Court Justice, what was your take on BK? Brett Kavanaugh. Sounds like we just signed up for more U.S. citizen spying and data collection. Can't say I'm the biggest fan in the world, but it's better than a progressive. I'm going to call it quits for the night, my friends. If I ever post again, how can I let you know it's me? If there's no possibility, I appreciate most of you taking the time to hear me out and ask questions. He can't really. I mean, he'd have to establish his credibility somehow, but even then, without trip code, it's a crapshoot. That said, go back to that post where Junior Senator Anon confirmed that the case was getting moved from Article 3 to make an Article 1 count. Article 1 are basically military courts created by Congress, given the powers granted to it by Article 1 of the Constitution, thus its name, Article 3. Courts are more what we normally think of as regular courts, from Supreme Court down to the district courts, the judicial branch of things. In other words, a military case was getting converted into a judicial case. Now who could require such treatment? Anons expand their thinking over on the Q board. Lawfag here, very interesting post here on the latest secret court battle. The poster claims it was a dispute about transfer of a case. To be honest, I never heard of that, and a quick look offers no easy answer, but we'll dig. So again, we got things going down that have never happened, or if this is all true, like we all believe it to be, folks, there is no other things to look at to see how this actually it could happen. It's all out of the box. It's all new, or been so long, and nothing of this magnitude. So that's what he's talking about there. Trying to look up other things. So found what I wanted. The Article 1 courts are set up with their implied powers given to Congress in Article 1. SCOTUS keeps a close and jealous eye on these to limit their use and not permit infringement on the judicial branch. Congress has a whole slew of these courts: tax court, veterans appeals, claims versus Fed, bankruptcy, but most noteworthy is a Court of Military Commission Review. The United States Court of Military Commission Review reviews military commission cases submitted to the court. The court is comprised of panels of at least 3 appellate military judges. The court was created in 2009 after Congress passed the Military Commissions Act of 2009, which allowed the rights of the accused in the military commissions to be expanded. These posts are correct, and the dispute centers on the fight is whether or not to transfer a Mueller inquiry to the military court. Don't know who is pushing what yet. Apparently, some Anons did not read the initial post. Anon posted a thread with a person claiming to be an elected official and stating that the secret proceedings the other day where the sealed courthouse involves a transfer of the case to an Article 1 court. Article 3 sets up SCOTUS and judicial branch, not Article 1. If yes, think of the EO from 7-10-18 might be related. Maybe some dots are here to be connected. Here's a link reference if you want to see the EO for yourself. We've gone over those. Sounds awfully Mueller related, if you ask me, especially considering the recently recovered text from Strzok's phone. This could be very big, folks, and I think this is, if nothing else, the biggest takeaway from it all. This anonymous posted summary of that EO. Earlier this month, President Trump issued an executive order that would allow agency heads to pick whomever they wish to administrative law judges, provided they are active lawyers or judges. Previously, the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, would independently vet candidates and then submit the agencies a short list of potential names. Sounds like POTUS was trying to streamline the hiring process for admin judges, maybe get ready for an influx of cases. Q has told us the judiciary branch is dirty. Maybe white hats are trying to get these cases heard with Article 1 judges to avoid the corrupt, dirty federal judges, and the cabal is fighting back. Wild, huh? Well, I just wanted to make you all aware of this, seeing as none of it would have been picked up upon by the QAnon. Again, use UMMV, I can't remember what he says, but I thought this was compelling enough to report on. Basically, think for yourself, just keep this in mind. I wanted to take a moment to highlight some recent Gab threads I composed in order to fill you in on some major happenings. So he's just dropping all those links. And to tell you again, follow me over on Gab. I realize it's not quite the same as getting massive articles that take you anywhere from 1 to 6 hours to read, but it does allow me to create nice, digestible mini blogs of sort. He gets into the Q March. me read this. Now, honestly, I'd love to get some direct feedback, not only from the Q Army and Anons out here, but also from Q himself. In mine, I'm just sick of all the hashtag lunatic leftist marches getting all the attention, and I'm tired of hearing some patriots out there in despair. We can help in this scenario, and what better way to make our presence undeniable than taking to the Capitol? I honestly believe we could easily get over 1 million people, if not multiple millions, peaceful marching through the district, and boy, wouldn't that be the force of question. Could you imagine if 1 million QAnon patriots descended upon D.C. and the likes of CNN just closed their eyes and ears and pretend like it wasn't happening? After all, we don't have to sit here and just wait all the time, wait for confirmation, for other players to take action, for other researchers to dig up something interesting. We can take action ourselves and organize something spectacular. But I'm also aware of what kind of target such an event would be, how many security issues there are, and how much opportunities there would be for a subterfuge. I wouldn't want a group of spooks infiltrating with Q shirts and insinuating violence or something horrible or worse. And that kind of reality we're talking about here, folks. I'm also keenly aware of the level of planning and coordination that goes into something like this, so it's certainly not something I could pull off by my lonesome. So here he is, he's talking about a Q march. I thought I already heard something like that in the plans or works or something, but who knows. All right, so that was an interesting article, folks. Neon Revolt and this Junior Anon, Junior Senator Anon is what he's calling himself. Junior Senator Anon. All right, something to keep in mind, and we'll see if he posts again. I'm going to go ahead and shut this down for now. Again, I'm Michael. This is a Patriot Hour. Thanks for joining in. Please subscribe. If you're not subscribed here on the Patriot Tech for this live feed, hit the subscribe and toggle the switch. Ring the bell. Leave a comment. Same thing here on the Patriot Hour. If you're watching this video that we put out after the live stream or I'm shutting it down, please subscribe. Folks, lots going on. Lots of things happening. I'm going to be here all day doing some research, and anything news, breaking news pops off, I'll be back in a heartbeat to bring it to you. Have a great afternoon. God bless, Godspeed each and every one of you worldwide.